be presenting are two global issues of overfishing and deforestation. This is Camille, this is Sawyer, John, David, and Jared's back there. Before we really get started, I wanted to play a game with you. So if everyone could stand up and step on either side of this line, just like right here. Or like that. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and the answer to the question relates to you. Step on the line. Yes, relates to you. Okay. So, oh yeah, this is called the line game also. The line.
It was very creatively named.
Yes. So, how many of you like to be outside? Step off. How many of you like maybe have gone fishing before or enjoy fishing? Step off. How many of you like hiking or like hiking in the woods? Step off.
I'm very outdoorsy.
How many of you like eating fish? David, what?
Doesn't like it.
Yeah, just, okay. Step off. How many of you just outside? It's great. Do you like it? No. Okay. Step off. So, are there any observations to be made, like how many people, or, yeah, I think that a lot of people like being outside. Yes. What if I told you that very soon, all this, like, forests, the oceans won't exist in the same way as it ever will, ever again, and very soon. I know. So, that was the line game. Turn to our seats. So, our presentation will consist of two parts. We will start looking at overfishing and then deforestation. We'll make connections between the two issues. And then we'll do a little group activity, which is what this little thing over here is. And then we'll have questions at the end. Yeah.
So overfishing is when the fishing industries catch fish faster than the fish can reproduce, so that the global level of fish declines in a large number. 1.2 billion people depend on fish as their source of protein, and more fish are becoming endangered, mostly through ignorance and lack of global management. In fact, the only really managed spots are in Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, and the few marine reserves that there are.
All right, but now that we know what overfishing is, let's learn some fun little facts about it. So, did you know that in between 1950 and 1994, the fishing industry increased its total catch by 400%, which resulted in the global amount of fish being decreased by 90%. That means that I think 60 years ago there were almost twice as many fish that there are now, and also more than 85% of all the world's fish hatcheries have been pushed over capacity. And this is just a fun fact that the Mitsubishi company that owns the car brand owns 60% of all bluefin tuna for some reason, because they plan to market it once the species goes extinct instead of trying to stop the species from going extinct in the first place.
Okay, so now we're going to see a visual of how much fish are overfished or stuff like that. So over half of all fish are fully exploited, which is there's a difference between overexploited, which is overfished, and fully exploited. Fully exploited means it's used to its extent and it can't recover, but it's not necessarily going to die out. And overexploited it's definitely either going to die out it's going to die out if we don't stop fishing it. And 7% of all fish is actually depleted. That means there's no way it can recover. There's no way we can get any of that fish back so we can fish it again. And all those fish that are fully exploited, they can eventually go to that depleted section, because if we keep fishing them, we can have that. And surprisingly, only about 1% of all fish are actually recovering back to their normal state. Here's a video of how we can end overfishing.
The Earth. There are currently 7 billion people living on 30% of its surface, and all of them are dependent on the remaining 70%, the ocean. The ocean is the largest source of food in the world. Fish is the main daily source of protein for 1.2 billion people. But fishers are more and more frequently returning home with empty nets. Let's turn the clock back a little. Some scientists say that in the last 60 years, stocks of large fish have fallen by 90%. They are warning that we are facing the collapse of all types of fish species in less than 50 years. The reason for this? Overfishing. Longline fishing vessels deploy 1.4 billion hooks a year. 1.4 billion hooks, each with a slice of fish hanging from them as bait. There are trawling vessels that cast nets with an opening of up to 23,000 meters squared, the size of 4 football pitches, and big enough to hold 13 jumbo jets, or more commonly, more than 500 tons of fish. Amongst these 500 tons of fish, there is a lot of bycatch. Bycatch is marine creatures incidentally caught, often at large quantity. Typically, shrimp trawlers throw 80 to 90% of the marine creatures caught back overboard. This means that for 1 kilo of shrimp, up to 9 kilos of other marine wildlife is caught and wasted. To relieve the strain on wild fish, 47% of our seafood demand is farmed fish. But marine aquaculture is more of a nail in a coffin than a lifeline. Many of the farmed fish are carnivorous. That is, they eat other, smaller fish. 5 kilos of captured wild fish are needed to produce 1 kilo of farm-reared salmon. Aquaculture just converts low-value small fish into higher-value bigger ones. It does not create more fish. The majority of European fish stocks are overfished. Historically, EU fisheries ministers have set fishing limits exceeding scientific advice. In 2008, fishing limits were defined for the highly prized bluefin tuna. Scientists recommended a fishing limit of 10,000 tons to rebuild the increasingly depleted population. However, the EU and other fishing nations decided on a fishing limit of 29,500 tons, 3 times what scientists had suggested. Then, despite this already inflated limit, 61,000 tons of bluefin tuna were caught. That is 6 times more than the recommended limit. Billions of euro in public subsidies are fueling this overfishing. If this continues, soon there will be no fish left. How do we end overfishing? Your politicians have the responsibility for making the decisions in Brussels that will end overfishing. Citizens have responsibility of encouraging and supporting their politicians to make those decisions.
lot of them are being improved so they're not so bad. One of the most destructive methods of fishing is bottom trawling, which is used to get all the fish like at the bottom of the ocean. It drags along the the other habitats like the coral reefs. It drags along the ground and uproots sea creatures and the coral.
Okay, here are some videos on how bottom trawling work.
And also it's being improved. So it's not good.
A bottom trawl is a type of fishing net that's pulled along the seafloor. Fishermen commonly use bottom trawls to catch shrimp and bottom-dwelling fish like halibut and sole. In addition to these target fish, however, the nets also catch a variety of ocean life that's usually thrown back dead or dying. Dragging heavy gear across the seabed can also damage sensitive seafloor habitat. Reducing the harmful effects of bottom trawling requires either modifying the fishing gear or limiting the areas where trawling is allowed to protect sensitive bottom-dwelling organisms and their habitat.
And then here's a video on how they're trying to fix bottom trawling.
Okay, yeah. The new bottom trawls. The new Bering Sea flatfish trawl gear reduces seafloor contact and adverse impacts on habitat and non-target species such as crab. The trawl doors ride up in the midwater, so they're not touching the ground. Reduces impact on crab and other seafloors. The lightweight rubber discs are spaced 90 feet apart to reduce the steep wires. The lightweight materials are used to support it and not, so they don't drag along the floor.
Alright, when bottom trawlers would go along the bottom of the floor, they're just trying to catch like one or two certain types of fish, or shrimp, I guess. And when this happens, there's a lot of bycatch. Different places are trying to set rules on like how much bycatch fishermen are allowed to catch, and some places even have the bycatch added to the what the fishermen catch, and that as both of those are added to how much they're allowed to catch like in that season.
Right. So along the lines of the bycatch reduction system, the Oregon pink shrimp fishery is the first low bycatch shrimp fishery, and to help with low bycatch, the cod fishing industry has created a few rules to help with the reduction system. So another way to help is through fish hatcheries. So we visited one of our local fish hatcheries in Indianola, which is run by Native Americans. And so 75% of the salmon caught in the Puget Sound and 90% of the salmon caught in the Columbia River originate from the fish hatcheries. And so this fish hatchery that we visited is important not only because it's a source of food, but for the Native Americans working there, it's cultural practice.
So we just told you about the problems the fish are facing in the water and the disastrous environmental effects that overfishing has on the water ecosystems. But our class also talked about the problems that trees are facing on land and the effects deforestation has on the habitats, the animals and plant species that live here's a short video about deforestation.
What is deforestation? Deforestation is the process whereby natural forests are cleared through logging and burning, either to use the growing woods or to replace the area for alternative uses. What is the extent of deforestation? 12 to 15 million hectares of forest are lost each year, the equivalent of 36 football fields per minute. What are the effects of deforestation? Number 1. Reduced biodiversity. Deforestation and forest degradation can cause biodiversity to decline. When forest cover is removed, wildlife is deprived of habitat and becomes more vulnerable to hunting. Considering that about 80% of the world's documented species can be found in tropical rainforests, deforestation puts at risk a majority of the Earth's biodiversity.
Number 2. Release of greenhouse gas emissions. Deforestation causes 15% of global greenhouse gas releases. 1/3 of these carbon dioxide emissions are caused by human activity. Number 3. Disrupted water cycles. As a result of deforestation, trees no longer evaporate groundwater, causing the local climate to be drier.
Number 4. Increased soil erosion. Deforestation accelerates rates of soil erosion by increasing runoff and reducing the protection of the soil from tree litter.
So deforestation has been going on for hundreds of years, primarily in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. On Bainbridge, deforestation was introduced with William Renton, the world's largest sawmill. It burned down twice, but wasn't restored after the second fire. Currently, the island is facing troubles with a city-approved warrant to chop down acres of trees to make way for a shopping mall. The islanders don't want this to happen because they fear what might happen to the habitat for the animals and the plants that live there.
Alright, so I gave you some of those fun facts for overfishing, so now let's see what the Lorax and I found for deforestation. So every hour, at least 4,500 acres of trees get cleared, which is crazy. Like this presentation is what, 45 minutes? So like 15 minutes after this presentation, that's another 4,500 trees that are gone. All over the world, 1.6 billion people rely on forest material. I was actually going to say million, and I still thought that was big. And also, all of those 4,500 acres, it's 60% of it is spread across just 7 countries, including Brazil, Canada, China, and the United States of America. So, all right. So now that you know what's wrong with deforestation, let's see what people can do to fix it. So one thing that anybody can do is to just set a good example for other people to follow. Just eat vegetables that were farmed sustainably, recycle more, plant a tree if you want to. Like those are all easy things that really do make a bigger difference than you would assume. And then And you can also support organizations like the Envira Amazonia Project, which is dedicated to the conservation of national rainforests. I want to say conversation. And you might not think that this affects us directly, but there's actually a tropical rainforest right across the water in the Olympics. That is one of the rainforests the Envira Amazonia Project is out to help conserve.
Okay, so we were talking about overfishing and deforestation, the causes, the effects, and the consequences, but we didn't really talk about how they're connected. Because when you think about like the trees and the water, it's kind of hard to think like how can they affect each other. Well, without the tree roots holding together the ground near bodies of water, the soil it washes away into the water, polluting it and destroying fish habitat, and it without the trees to shade the ground, the carbon in the soil oxidizes, releasing a lot of carbon dioxide, which also is not very good.
When you chop down trees in their habitat, animals' habitat, the animals have to move somewhere else. And if you chop down all the trees, then there's nowhere for the animals to live. Some of the animals around here that some of you may have seen on land are the Canadian lynx, the wet-tailed deer, and then in the ocean that we have the sea otter, and the humpback whale, and the orca whale. And then another one is the island fox, which only lives on a small little island outside of California. And they started chopping down the trees on the island, and if all the trees are gone on the island, then the foxes actually have nowhere to live. Right now, the main killer of the foxes is like diseases, because their population is so small, diseases are easily passed. But if the trees are all chopped down on the island, then there would be nowhere for them to live.
Alright, so now we have a game. I assume all of you guys have played Go Fish before, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
This is nothing like that.
yeah, we have a game that we're calling Go Fish, but it's actually not very similar at all. Not right now.
Don't sue us.
So basically, you guys all have the bags in front of you. So can you look inside of this? Some of you might have a slip of paper that says something like super trawler or small trawler or like sports fisherman or something.
Some of you may not have one.
If you have a piece of paper, could you please like come up here?
Oh yes.
Alright, and if you don't have them, you're not really participating in the game.
Well, if you don't have them, you are participating if you don't know why. So much.
So basically, the object of the game is to get as many of these fish.
You might want to wait for this on that.
You want to get as many of the plastic fish as you can.
Okay. This is representing the bycatch.
So who here absolutely loves goldfish? Okay, no you don't. You actually love the plastic.
No.
I know it's very, I know it's very counterintuitive, but that's what it is. I personally would rather not eat it.
Okay, who has cards that say okay, that? I mean, you only have a plant. I mean, you have a small trawler. Come on.
A lot.
You have one.
Mix it up.
We're not eating goldfish, so that's yeah, but we're using I'm gonna be sanitary.
Alright, so in order to anybody have super
Super
trawler.
trawler.
Does anyone have a piece of paper that says super trawler?
Super troll.
Anyone?
I'm a sports fisherman.
We have no super troll.
Wait,
Oh,
super
troll.
trawler.
We have a super troll.
Okay, so
Get through the super bucket.
Darn it.
that's your fishing net. So
Who
you're gonna
has
go through and
these-
scoop up as much as you can.
What's small trawler? Is anybody small?
A small trawler?
You have a
Yeah,
Right here.
Oh,
Alright.
there you go.
Okay.
And
What is
sports fisherman? Okay.
Wow.
Explain it, Sawyer.
Alright, so basically, first, the super trawler gets to go through, and you get to scoop up as much fish as you can. Remember, you're trying to get the plastic ones. Take the bucket.
It's like,
There you go. Okay, now I want you to divide your catch from the bycatch.
Try not to eat all of your bycatch just yet.
Yeah, you can just like
If you want it, you can have it later in
Three
the
separate
separate for
piles.
dramatic effect.
Yeah, find
bycatches.
you
and
have
You
your
actually-
clam, is
I want
right?
to take out the plastic fish, and that's the
So-
good fish.
Now,
for
who's a
dramatic
small
effect.
trawler here?
Go for it.
Okay, so you get that.
You do the same thing.
Same thing. Okay, then divide up your catch and your bycatch. Now, all you people, with sports fishermen,
You guys get
you
the
get
fun.
5 seconds with your eyes closed
And you
to
have to
grab as many fish as you can,
One
at a
by
time.
one. You can't grab multiple.
Can't do
Good.
like.
Okay, so who's going first?
Yes.
You're going first. Okay, close your eyes. Go.
Go.
1,
2,
3,
4,
5.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
There you go.
Stuck together. Count in 1.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go. 1,
That's like a good fish to eat another good.
3, 4, 5,
Okay, there.
Okay.
You guys really don't understand the 1 minute
3,
time rule.
2,
Like this.
1, go.
1,
2,
3.
4, 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm a sports fisherman.
Go.
Go. 1, 2,
3, 4,
4, 5.
5.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
We got
Alright,
more?
one sports fisherman.
okay. Go.
Go.
1, 2,
3, 4,
4, 5.
5.
Now we'll play more than one at a time. No,
There's competition amongst the fishermen.
Okay, so
Maybe she had more fishermen on her boat.
yeah, well, this activity represents like the fishing world. The super trawlers have their giant nets, and they come through and they catch as much as they can. They also catch a lot of bycatch, as you can see over there.
So much.
All the goldfish, the plastic fish,
I wouldn't eat that.
and
You can
in
eat
real
that
life,
if you want.
they wouldn't just eat the bycatch; they'd throw it back into the ocean,
You're setting a good
and
example.
Dead.
all of it
All
would be
the
dead.
bycatch would be
All
dead.
the bycatch would die.
So that's like-
they just wasted all the fish.
So
It's
he's
not
setting
ju-
a good example by eating
And
it.
it's not
Yeah.
just fish. It's
Way to
other
go,
like-
you're saving the fishing industry.
It's other things like
It's other
sharks
marine creatures.
and dolphins and stuff like that.
And so then all the other fishing vessels come through with their nets, getting lots of bycatch. You can see there.
Is that
One
one
fish,
one
and
fish?
all of that. And then there are all the other people. There's people who fish for fun, people who fish for a living, people who fish for a living. They eat the fish that they catch. All those people come through, and they don't have very much of a chance.
This
After
didn't really serve our
all of
point
the super
because you
trolls
guys
came
were
through.
so good at this.
Yeah.
We're very talented.
We
And
were assuming you guys were going to be really bad and you'd have a better point. But you guys did actually really well.
You can hear it. Oh my god.
Alright, so then everybody out there who wasn't playing, you guys represent all the people who don't have access to the water, those people who are sick and they can't fish, and all those other people who aren't fishing.
So how do they get their fish?
So they have to buy the fish that they want. That comes from whoever catches the most fish. Now it'll be the super trawlers.
So if anybody wants
Even
to pay her
though-
for some goldfish.
And even though she catches the most bycatch, she also gets the most fish. And so she can sell it at lower prices. So that's where people buy their fish from.
Okay, so all of you have cards in here that says "Plant Me."
I got that.
So these are homemade paper, and these are two papers stacked on top of each other, and in between those two paper are seeds. And so if you plant these, I don't know what seeds there are in there, but they will carrot and wildflower. Okay, they will grow.
Wait, so we just planted it together?
Yes, it's a paper.
We're laughing it all so we don't waste any food. We're all hungry.
No, it's this thing.
So much fun. Yeah, it's so much fun. I want to.
We keep the
Wow.
You could probably.
I have a question for you guys.
They
Your
need
shirts look really cool. What do I represent?
Ooh, where'd mine go? That was.
Yeah, where does yours go?
Please.
Fishes and trees, yeah.
I like it.
Well, it's not the scale between fishes and trees, it's the scale between us and fishes.
We're about to sail. We're about to sail.
You guys did a great job. Yeah, this is a really good presentation.
Wait,
Also,
there's
you know, it looks a little bit
No,
like
I meant the
the starfish means you keep trying.
Oh, that represents a bluefin tuna, which is going extinct.
So is there a lot of problems?
So disgusting.
Well, I mean, I guess
Puget
so.
Sound has troubles with its
It was kind of a good record. I feel like
It
well, no, it started out as it was like this field of green like jelly beans and Swedish fish in the water, and then you slowly just take it all away until you guys don't get anything. And then you changed it.
This is so much fun. I want it to go.
Thank you.
Which one?
The bags is the best part, right? No.
Okay, so one last thing. So I'm just gonna use this card as an example. Put these ones in there. But on here, this is kind of so the best choices. These are the ones that kind of the best choices to eat. The good alternatives are the ones that are good to eat. They're not. They're like. They're kind of good. It's kind of like the alternative. And the ones to avoid, these are the ones that you should probably definitely not, like, try to stay away from. Oh, yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? Things they would like to ask us? Yes.
So with the planting things, you just like put these in the ground?
You just like toss them on the ground and hopefully they'll grow.
Probably don't want to toss it.
In the ground?
Maybe put it under a little bit of dirt,
And
but
then
yeah.
like water?
Yeah.
And the paper will decompose and the seeds will.
Okay.
So there's a seed built into
I
the
can
paper.
feel it.
Actually, they probably a lot of seeds.
Yes. Well, there's more.
You don't.
You don't just
You
grow
have to wait. We don't have to know either.
So I have a question about how do you guys personally feel about the plan for the mall on Bainbridge?
I don't. Yeah,
We don't
think
Joey's,
it's a good idea.
I don't really think it's a good idea since there was a bunch of
It's
other
chopping down a lot of
construction
trees.
going on about. Like, every time one construction site stops, another one goes up.
Yeah. There was one other person who was in our group but couldn't make it here who's stoked for it, and Joey.
Oh.
And none of us know why he's so excited for that mall to come in.
He likes food.
Also,
And that's
there's
why he
like
likes
a
food.
protest
Yeah.
Just because
where
it's a mall doesn't
Highlander
mean it's a
set up in a tree for like a week or something to protest the action, but eventually she came down.
And now they're building it.
Yep.
They have.
And it actually passed through the city very like quietly before there was a lot of information that went out to the island about it going in. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
it was
like
already
yeah, the whole thing was passed before we actually really even knew what it was. Yes? Only plant the ones that say plant me, the other ones.
You can plant all of
You
them.
can
Oh, you
plant
can?
all of them.
Yeah.
They're all seed paper.
Okay. How was it? Well, we're done, so we're just answering questions right now.
You can come play with us if you want.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to take some goldfish, we have a lot.
Yeah, and we'll find it.
We have some of these fish too.
Take a big bucket and give some to everybody.
Because the food sticks out. You can't make it perfectly loose. It sticks out.
And then we
overfishing. Look at all that.
I'm gonna sleep with their stuff together. Okay, switch.
It actually is like it's a lot of fish to eat.
So,
You got it.
so are you guys done?
Yeah, we're-
What did
Have you guys done as a group or as a school or whatever to make a difference? Or is there anything you're planning to do? Or?
Well, my family, like just personally, my family has stopped buying fish from like large commercial fishing companies, and we actually have our neighbor gives us fish. He's a sports fisherman. Yeah.
our family completely stopped eating fish?
I never ate
Except
fish.
for me.
Just stopped.
Just completely stopped.
No more fish for me.
We're doing this to raise awareness so other people can help stop overfishing and deforestation. It's another thing we're doing. Any more questions?
What are some things that people here in the room could do as consumers or with their families or with their school?
You can buy stuff that's like, if you're getting fish, you can get like the good category on those card thingies.
Yeah.
What if
yeah,
I
like-
really like sushi?
You can make sure the sushi comes from a sustainable source.
And
Check, like, ask the people at the restaurant, if you're at a restaurant.
A lot
where
of
they get their
restaurants
fish
will.
from.
A lot of restaurants will know that they're using endangered fish and just keep on doing it because it tastes good. So just ask.
You could ask them what kind of fish is in this. And I'll tell you. And if it's on the avoid list, say, I don't want this.
What about deforestation?
You can recycle stuff, and you can buy products that aren't, like,
reusable and like
Five things
Are
that
reusable.
are reusable.
Are
that aren't made from, like, deforested trees, and buy products that come from sustainable sources.
One thing I will say is that it's way harder to know when tree product is coming from a sustainable forest because unless it's like advertised actively, you really don't know where it is. Where it came from. So I'd say on that end, it's more effective to just recycle whatever you get that comes from forest materials. Work on whatever you took. Work on trying to give it back because it's hard to know where it came from.
You can also plant trees, and
If everybody planted one tree, we'd have a bunch of trees.
yes.
Oh man.
And you get
any more questions?
What are you gonna do with all this?
gonna eat it.
We're gonna eat it.
We're gonna give it to you guys, some of it.
You guys can take
Some
it
of it to you guys.
Take as much goldfish as you want, that's cool. We'll show that.
We're gonna use
Yeah.
some of it.
Well,
Yeah, we have another presentation tomorrow that's going to use it, and then whatever's left over.
You guys can still take some of these.
Chicken. Oh yeah, and
We
then
have a lot.
we have a family of chickens. I'll be very hungry and very cheesy for a long time.
what?
Our class is talking about donating these little plastic fishes to maybe we're gonna donating them to the toy drive. Yeah.
Sure.
Something my old school did is that like every year in fifth grade you would plant the whole class would go outside and plant a tree.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You have
that's
a question?
Yeah, I was curious, how or why did you guys choose overfishing and deforestation as your theme?
Well, a lot of people were interested in it. We all thought it was big problems and it needed to be stopped. And we could see the connections between them. So we thought we could include them both in one presentation.
The picking process was like everybody kind of like found a topic and we all presented them and saw and we looked at which ones we wanted to do. And there were a few people who did deforestation, a few people who did overfishing, and they had so much popularity that we decided to group them as one so that we could do both.
Besides this event, what else are you doing to connect with your peers about these issues?
Well, you can tell some of us have been talking to our families about it.
And our families, we've been like communicating with our families and friends.
And then they've been communicating.
Yeah.
Should people ask me what I do during school?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of the other, I'm sure a lot of the other students that have at school are tired of us talking about it.
what about art night, you guys, and,
About what?
presenting to at the morning meeting?
Oh yeah.
Alright. Wait, what?
We're gonna do this after morning meeting.
We are?
Yeah.
On the same question, so this problem of overfishing and deforestation, it's not just an issue in the Puget Sound area.
It's
What are your-
worldwide.
What are your plans to connecting with your peers, let's say, in the Philippines, who are facing the same challenges?
We were hoping to use this as that opportunity since people come here from all around the world. We set up here to tell people from different places about the issues that we're tackling.
So they can pass it on to other people, and those people can pass it on to other people.
Until it spreads like wildfire, which is a bad analogy to use. Yes.
So what about the other kids at your school? Like, are they not involved in this? How are you guys like
well,
telling them?
They aren't.
The 8th grade is completely involved.
Yeah, they aren't actively involved like a part of the program, but a lot of them have been interested about what we're doing.
And we're gonna be presenting to them.
Yeah.
This material, it decomposes, not degrades, right?
Yes, it decomposes.
Made out of culling.
It's made out of recycled paper.
I knew that.
It's paper made of paper. Are there any more questions?
I'm still hungry.
Other than that,
Yeah, feel free to take